Have you tried not dying on Scarif?
I will say,
Didn't consider that one, did ya?
it is a period of civil war beyond a galaxy far, far away. Welcome to the podcast within a podcast, Rogue Ones, for our Parodies of Star Wars episode in honor of the release of the LEGO Skywalker Saga game. My name is Klaudia. My pronouns are she, her. You can find me on social media at Claudia Says. And my gender of the week is LEGO Star Wars Finpo.
So true.
And Cody Wan, to be fair. Shout out to the animators. I know that you guys were crunched into oblivion to make this, and the fact that you took the time to have Finn jump out of Rose's arms into Poe's arms, you do God's work. You threw the first Lego brick at Star Wars.
Exactly. I was about to say that exactly, word for word.
I'm Noah. My pronouns are he, him. You can find me on TikTok at the Jewish Jedi. And even though Pesach was actually before we recorded this podcast, my gender is Passover themed. My gender is God's favorite creature, the world's largest frog, which I'm happy to explain. So, are we all familiar with the 10 plagues?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm familiar with one that I lived through, but...
Okay. So one of the 10 plagues is frogs. However, the Hebrew word for frog, it has a plural form and a non-plural form, right? In the Torah, when God is like, I'm sending frogs down on the people of Egypt, the word is singular. And then later is plural frog. So there's a midrash that's a couple hundred years old, I believe, that basically is like, hey, this sounds like it's just one like pyramid-sized frog that God drops on Egypt, and then it like stomps into the city, and every time the Egyptians hit it, it makes more smaller frogs, which is why it becomes a plague.
Which video game villain is that like? You keep hitting it, and then the smaller ones come out. I feel like there's some boss in a video game like that.
Yeah, the Passover video game where the Egyptians are fighting a giant frog.
No, I mean, like, I think there's like a real boss in a real video game like that, but I don't play enough games to know.
Yeah, you're asking Noah, and someone who is on multiple occasions said, I don't play video games.
Anyway,
And I don't know, but yeah, I just wanted to share that. That's my favorite piece of Jewish wisdom, that there may have been a pyramid-sized frog involved in the 10 plagues.
My favorite thing about Noah is that, well, we host a Star Wars podcast, and then he'll be like, the gender that I'm bringing this week has nothing to do with that franchise. Anyways.
He's the Jewish Jedi. It's on brand.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. You win this time, the Jewish Jedi. Hi, my name is Mel. I use they, them pronouns. You can find me on social media at Melvin Copa and on TikTok at Grunkle Rex. And my gender this week is Perry the Platypus in Rogue One.
That's so powerful.
Okay, no, because where in Rogue One? Does he survive?
Okay.
Is he on Scarif?
Is he K2SO?
In a lot of ways, he is Jyn Erso.
No, that means he dies.
Mads Mikkelsen's favorite child, Perry the Platypus.
Okay, but however, in the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars parody, it is implied that Dr. Doofenshmirtz is Galen Erso. So, like, there's
That's
just a lot of
powerful.
things.
Well, they're both autistic kings.
So true.
They are. Galen is pretty much autistic.
Remember when Galen Erso tries to commit election fraud?
Hey, is that the plot of Fantastic Beasts 3?
It is. It really is.
Yeah, I guess the necessary sequel to Holocaust Vape Skull Future Vision is Gellert Grindelwald commits election fraud.
Noah, the skull he vapes out of is the twin sibling of the creature that is the Electoral College.
For those of you who are
And they're fighting for, what is the position called? The Supreme Mugwump?
For those of you who are listening, we're not making a funny haha. This is real. This is the real plot of the film. Please do not go see this film. Just look up the plot.
Yeah, fuck J.K. Rowling. However, this is such a funny concept.
Yeah, just look up the plot on Wikipedia and lose your fucking mind. Anyways, yeah. So the Lego Star Wars is one of the funniest parts of Star Wars and is full of parody. We've talked about the holiday special, we've talked about the Halloween special on here, and people have been talking about the big video game that just came out. So this week we are going to kind of explore the world of Star Wars parodies, which is so large because it's been 50 years. And there's a lot on this journey. But the way we want to begin is just to define what is satire and what is parody.
So I feel this was just an important distinction to make because I think the internet sort of uses these ideas interchangeably when they are like very, very, very different. I have copied the definition of parody from Wikipedia because I just like how it sounds. And I'm going to do a close reading now. I don't have a real mic, so I can't do ASMR, but pretend that I am. However, the writer and critic John Gross observes in his Oxford Book of Parodies that parody seems to flourish on territory somewhere between pastiche, which is just where something fools around with the material of high literature and adapts it to low ends, but also makes to distinguish between like parody and the burlesque, which basically is the idea that parody is supposed to be funny, but it's poking fun in a nice way. Like the goal of making a parody of something is inherently because the creators of that parody love the property in question. Satire, on the other hand, is not necessarily poking fun. It's more drawing out like this is a negative thing and we're going to attack it in a very humorous light.
I mean, I think when you said the part about pastiche, this is why a lot of fan fiction can often, and that it is like done from the love of the thing. Some fan fiction can often be parody or is written purposely to be parody. As I think the genre of crack that's what it is, that we often deal with much on this podcast. It comes from that same like love of the thing, and also I think the part about like, oh, why are these two things often conflated, or why do we never know what it means? I'd like to blame South Park, specifically South Park. There are a lot of things that have contributed to our like, well, it's satire, so like lighten up kind of thing, but like South Park, much like the Star Wars prequels and other like big cultural franchises that were coming out in the early 2000s, shout out to the Spider-Man movies and Lord of the Rings and the Star Wars prequels and all that kind of stuff. South Park is a part of like the founding DNA of the internet, and also of like everybody's humor, and then that carried into everybody who then joined and how it works and what they think satire is, and that you can just be funny by being an asshole, and it's not funny, and they stop writing jokes.
Yeah, and that's a distinction I actually forgot to make in defining satire, which is that a really critical part of a good satire is that the audience is aware of what is being satirized and who the joke is at the expense of, which is a theme we will circle back to later. But yeah, that is an important distinction to make, is that a good satire only really works if the audience is basically in on the joke. However, parodies, I do think it's important to note that a lot of things that we're going to talk about today, like they are a labor of love. They are making fun of Star Wars, but they are also very much like made by people who clearly love this, I don't even want to call it a property, media conglomerate, perhaps.
Franchise.
Yeah.
Fictional universe.
Large franchise that is everywhere. But yeah,
intellectual property.
But these are made by people who do enjoy this. So that said, Mel, do you want to take us into our first parody of the evening?
Yes. Before we get into that, actually, I did want to also interject. I was interested to hear your thoughts about this, because I think sometimes a parody can contain satire, but that does not mean that they are the same thing. And I think that's really evident, at least in the Star Wars parodies that I watched, where it's like, you're clearly like satirizing this one concept that you think is kind of in line or with the theme of Star Wars, but I disagree, and we can get into that. But
I totally agree with that standpoint. I do think that parody can contain satire. I am also of the belief that, like, at least for me, I like categorization. So I like to be able to be like, this is parody, this is satire. But yeah, there is some definite bleed over there. And I do think it's a good point to bring out that, like, within a parody, there can be like certain scenes, lines, or moments that are like very clearly like a satire. And they can sort of like, I'm doing a hand motion right now, but this is an audio media, but they sort of like mesh together a little bit in those times.
I think the best example of that, like, we're going to get into some more long form parodies, but there's a lot of shorter ones that we may mention. The one that comes to mind with that bleed over for me is the How It Should Have Ended series, which they do for like any major movie or TV show or whatever that's coming out. But like when they've done it for Star Wars, for example, like it does kind of like the cinema sins thing of like, oh, here's like what should have happened or whatever. But then it also does a lot of like, funny, loving things as well, that are just like making fun of like what's happening, not in like a bad way. And like, it very much goes back and forth in that way, and people would argue like Honest Trailers goes back and forth with that as well, but like it kind of goes it goes back and forth with that very, very much.
CinemaSins, you're my fucking enemy, and I hate what you've done to the media landscape.
We've talked about CinemaSins Thrawn on here.
We have. You just weren't there because you don't know anything about Thrawn.
Who?
We said that, I don't know what, if when it came up in a conversation, we basically said that Thrawn would be like kind of like the CinemaSins guy, like because he's really into art. So if he did that for like movies and stuff, like he would really pick it apart. However, he does like the artistic side, so like maybe he would also like he could also be the CinemaSins guy's enemy as well. He could be like, "Fuck you, it's about the art."
And with that, I'm trying to think where I should start. I could go chronologically, or I could go kind of just as I'm vibing.
I think go chronologically,
Okay.
because if we want to talk about like the history of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing: I watched 6 different Star Wars parodies. To be fair, 3 of them are all in the same self-contained universe. I needed to know more. I needed context. I can't wait to get there. So I'm going to start talking about Spaceballs, which came out in 1986.
It was not the first Star Wars parody, but it's one of the first.
Yes.
So, and I would like to also say, I have not seen this. So if we could get perhaps a plot refresher.
Yes, of course. So Spaceballs is basically A New Hope in a way. It is about a gentleman named Lone Star. He is the Han Solo / Luke Skywalker archetype. He is like he is a Force user, but Schwartz user, because that is what it is called in this universe. And also like the pilot who's like, I don't have any friends except for my best friend who is named Barf. Barf is short for Bartholomew.
That's so powerful.
He's a Mog, a man dog. I love Barf. He is very charming. He's played by John Candy. Anyways, the whole plot of this movie is that Princess Vespa, who is the Leia of this universe, doesn't want to get married out of convenience. She wants to marry for love, so she runs away from her wedding. And the Spaceballs, who are the bad guys, the Empire, who have a lot of phallic imagery, obviously, as like their kind of deal. They kidnap her because she's run away from her wedding, and they want access to the airlock of her planet, because there's like this, basically her planet is like almost vacuum sealed in the reverse, so there's a bunch of air.
Like Scarif.
It's like Scarif. Literally, okay, so this is what happened. What happened was
Spaceballs. So this is the thing I mentioned before we started recording, is that once the sequels and also the anthology movies started coming out, there were people who were like, how did Spaceballs predict this? It's just one more thing that Spaceballs predicted.
Spaceballs, there is a shot that kind of reminded me of Solo, just a little bit. But I don't know how to describe it in a way that's not gonna make me sound fucking crazy. Anyways, so basically, oh god, what is the name of the planet called? Oh my god. Druidia. That is the name of the planet. Has this like shield around it. And they need the passcode to open it so they can steal all the air out of Druidia, because their planet is running out of air. Also followed by the president of the Spaceball planet is reading a Nixon book. Like,
it's
in
political.
bed. It's
Why
political.
is Nixon here?
That's a great question.
Get him out of this movie.
It was definitely not the point of that scene, because he is also like fucking and sucking. But I was like, why are you reading a Nixon book? Anyways, so they kidnap her, or they want to kidnap her so she can give them they can extort her to get the passcode to get the air. She also has a robot called Dot, who is played by Joan Rivers. Much to think
about that.
What?
It's
C-3PO is
crazy.
it's Joan Rivers.
Is Joan Rivers?
Yes.
That's incredible.
It's crazy. She has this plate on her chest that like is like what mode she's in. So like there's sleep mode. I think there's like maybe an attack mode. I can't remember. But there is also Virgin Alarm. There's a scene where Vespa and Lone Star are going to kiss, and her virgin alarm goes off, and she's like, "Stop it! Stop it right
just
now!"
Like C-3PO, like
Exactly.
Wait,
POV, Joan Rivers is going to beat you to death.
did this come out before or after Empire Strikes Back?
Well after, right?
Oh,
'Cause it
okay,
was
so
87.
okay.
The Bite of 87. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That was a fucking Five Nights at Freddy's lore joke. Anyways, so basically, Lone Star happens because he is indebted to Pizza the Hut, who is a large, frankly, one of those terrifying creatures I've ever seen in cinema. Like, it was very Kafka-esque.
It scared me as a child. Pizza the Hut scared me as a child. Like, they were like, "Oh, Claudia, you love Star Wars." Like, there's a lore drop about me, is that my family are like white people who are obsessed with Mel Brooks movies. But none of my family likes Star Wars, so Spaceballs was always their least favorite. But then I liked Star Wars, so Spaceballs became one of my favorite. But the few times that we did watch it, they were like, "Claudia, why don't you like this?" and whatever. And I'd be like, "Pizza the Hut is so scary."
Okay, so I just looked up an image of this thing, and I'm not gonna lie, my literal first thought was I was like, this looks like a fucking David Cronenberg movie. Like, this is it's scary.
Hey, would you like to know the grotesque and terrible end that man meets?
I would love to.
He gets trapped inside of a limousine and eats himself to death.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
No, okay, this is a horror movie.
It's fucking
That is
bleak.
objectively a horror movie.
Okay, also, so anyways, point is, Lone Star and Vespa meet and they hit it off. They've got banter, they've got jokes. They've got like enemies to lovers type vibes. It's whatever. But they crash on this planet that is obviously Tatooine. One of the best scenes in all of Star Wars, or not Star Wars, in fucking Star Wars parody history happens where the Palpatine-esque character, the president, is like, go comb the desert. And it just cuts to two stormtroopers holding this huge comb going through the desert.
That's
That's
it.
iconic.
We can end the episode there. That is the best joke.
Okay, I would also argue there's also a very good joke when Lone Star is trying to save Vespa originally when she's getting like tractor beamed into their like ship. He's like, Barf, jam their signal, and Barf launches this huge jar of jam at their fucking satellite dish, and it jams them.
They don't make movies like this anymore. They
don't
really
make movies
don't.
like this. It's also just, it's Mel Brooks movies. I love them. This is in particular, I'm like, this shit is funny. Like, it's funny in a way that doesn't feel like hurtful. That being said, there is like some things about Jewishness that I, as a non-Jewish person, feel unequipped to talk about. Very specifically, there's a scene, it is the scene where they extort the code to the planetary lock from Vespa's dad. They get him on a fucking FaceTime call, essentially, and are like,
Oh my God,
listen.
I forgot.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. Basically, they're like, hey, we're going to reverse your daughter's nose job that you got her for her 16th birthday.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, this is definitely like a stereotype. This is not great.
So, if I could have a brief interlude to talk about Mel Brooks and satire, because I think about this gentleman a lot. Because obviously Mel Brooks is Jewish. We know this. And he has a lot of jokes about Jews, some of which I think are very funny and some of which I'm like, okay, that didn't age very well. But also comedy ages like the swiftest and poorest of all mediums. So like it's not. However, like I mentioned earlier with the whole, like, it's important that people watching satire know what the joke is, so they be in on the joke. The issue with making satire about like the group that you belong to is that outsiders of the group will laugh at it, but it's not the same. So like it's complicated because on one hand, I'm like, this joke is there are funny jokes you can make about like being a part of a minoritized community. We do it all the time about gay people because it's funny. Like, however, it gets really dicey and complicated when like the out group is then basically feeling like they are allowed to laugh. And that is this weird intersection and this weird line that I don't really know how people like reconcile with about where and when it's okay. Because like for example, I love Jojo Rabbit. It is a wonderful movie. Fuck you if you don't like Taika Waititi. But one of the things about it is that it makes a lot of jokes at the expense of Jewish people and about the Holocaust and about the Second World War. But Taika Waititi is a Jewish man, and they're good jokes and they're well made. But then you have a lot of Gentiles that are like finding this extremely funny because it is. And it's like, this is weird. It's not like bad per se, but it's weird. And it's a really weird gray area that satire often creates. And I haven't seen Spaceballs, so I cannot speak to how well that was done because not all of Mel Brooks's work is aged super well, which is it's normal, it's comedy, it happens. But I do think that's just, and it's an interesting thing to note, especially in like the area of comedy of like who is the joke of the expensive and who is laughing are really important questions. But boy, does that get dicey fast. Like the second you present it to an audience,
Absolutely.
it's so weird. It's so weird.
It's funny because whenever people want to bring up the whole free speech thing, they're like, nobody can make a joke anymore. They're always like, oh, they never would be able to make Blazing Saddles or anymore. And it's funny. It's like actually the difference between South Park making whatever joke and you making whatever joke was that Mel Brooks is a Jewish man making a lot of these jokes, and he also had like Mel Brooks was a Jewish man making a lot of these jokes, whatever, and it was punching up a lot of the time. Like he probably couldn't get Blazing Saddles made for different reasons, like maybe not greenlit for different reasons, but it has other problems. But actually, it would not be canceled in the way you think it would. It has a different context than haha, we're South Park and we make fun of everybody. I'm gonna keep bringing you back to South Park because
All roads lie back.
I
Going to South Park.
I am the millennial on this podcast, and I used to be really into South Park. And there is a fandom around South Park. I was never a part of that. It was just like I was a very depressed teen who got really into like comedy. I was really into the Book of Mormon. I was really into anything on Comedy Central. I would watch like The Daily Show, whatever. And then they had on ComedyCentral.com, you could watch like random, like you could press a randomizer button and watch like a random episode of South Park. And like that's what I did when I was depressed in college before I got into Futurama. Before that it was How I Met Your Mother. Like it was rough
Bleak.
out here. It was bleak before I started watching things that were better. Anyways, yeah, so all roads lead to South Park in that the context is very crucial. Noah, have you seen History of the World?
I haven't, but I kind of want to burst your bubble about South Park for a second. And I don't know if you know this, but Trey Park, his name is Trey.
Trey Parker?
Yeah, one of the creators of South Park, his mom is Jewish.
Really?
He is Jewish. He does
did
not
not know
identify
this.
with it religiously, but he is Jewish. And I
did not
point
know
this
this.
out. I point this out because this is that point of like who is laughing at the joke and who's in on it. Because the thing about South Park is, and the thing about a lot of satire about pretty much any marginalized community, is that there are levels to it where it's like there's a point where Gentiles and any non-minoritized person are like watching a comedy that's not about them. And they are laughing at these jokes that are really derogatory because the creators like it's funny to me, and it's like yeah, I want you to really analyze like who's laughing. I recently saw, I cannot remember, but there was a Black creator on TikTok talking about like Boondocks, the show, where they were like, if
I
you're a
saw
white
that
person, you're
TikTok.
watching this, quickly, I need you to explain why. And it's that same thing of like, what is being satirized, who is laughing, and what is the joke of the expensive? Because the problem is that line gets really blurry really fast. Now, to Mel Brooks's credit, I feel like he's generally been pretty clear throughout his life and career, like, you are not the person I made this for. However, that barrier is borderline non-existent for a lot of satire. And so like, especially with South Park, the jokes at the expense of like so many people are written from the perspective of like, LOL, it's just an in-joke. It's funny to me, but it's like, you're enabling a lot of really disingenuous and bad behavior, which is a weird line that satirical works have to walk. I don't know if Spaceballs does that, because once again, I have not seen this. But that's just like vis-a-vis satire in media. I think that's an important thing to acknowledge.
I think that something that's really interesting about Star Wars parodies in specific is that this is a very prevalent theme in it, of like walking that line. And I as I get into it later, because I don't want to get into too much into it now, but like where I think this is a really good way to look at it on a more like theoretical level as opposed to a personal level where it's like, oh, as this is my like literal identity and like this is something I cannot divorce from myself. But like as a Star Wars fan, like I can look at something and like analyze it as like, okay, you clearly don't understand like this. You don't understand how the Jedi work. That is going to be something I have to talk about later. But like truly beating people's asses. Point is, let's get back to Spaceballs. Basically what happened they are able to harness the power of the Schwartz, which is Mel Brooks's version of the Force. He also plays the Yoda character who is named Yogurt. Where is yogurt capitalism? That's a great question, and it is answered in the movie itself. He predicted Grogu capitalism.
Yeah.
Elaborate immediately.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is one of my favorite parts of the movie actually is Mel Brooks doing a commentary on franchise capitalism. Like people refer to it about everything, not just about Star Wars, but like where he basically like in the movie he's like we got to do it for the merchandise. And at the time like the cultural discussion around Star Wars was we are creating what a blockbuster is and we are creating merchandising around films. Like that was the big cultural discussion, so that's what he was making fun of. And nowadays it's just normal.
Yeah.
So
no, like you get to see how like dystopian it is in the universe, because like it starts with basically imagine Noah when Luke goes to train with Yoda, that he goes basically to a merchandise shop or a place with a merchandise shop.
Oh, it's much like when in the Lego Halloween special when they're like they're satirizing Galaxy's Edge, but they like by having the merchandise store within like in for those who may not have listened to our Halloween episode, in that they have that one of the huts after the Empire, one of the huts wants to turn Vader's castle into a casino and a theme park basically and like a destination place to stay, and he like makes a merchandise store or whatever, and it looks just like the one in Galaxy's Edge, and it has a lot of layers because this is produced by Disney and Lego. It's Spaceballs walked so that could run.
So true. But anyways, they're able to save the day. The whole like Death Star thing is not the Death Star, it is a maid. So the ship that they are in turns into a woman with a vacuum, and she goes to suck all the air out of this planet, and Lone Star uses the Schwartz to stop that from happening. It's great. You were gonna say.
Isn't there also kind of a Voltron parody there?
Yes.
Like they use a
Yes. It is very Voltron, very Power Rangers-esque.
Everybody at home, please check off a box for Claudia brings in an unrelated piece of media.
No, but no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It is literally
Mel
No, I
Brooks.
know. I'm just being a dick, but like
Mel Brooks.
I the Voltron series and I have beef.
Voltron Kitty Mel Brooks, are you kidding? Basically, what happened afterwards is the maid gets destroyed. They do something very similar to the movie A New Hope, where they go into like this little hole, and it's her ear hole actually, and they go to hit this self-destruct button within the maid. Darth Helmet, who is the Darth Vader character, Rick Moranis plays Darth Helmet. It's one of his best performances. It's so funny.
He walked so that Kylo Ren could run, and many people
So
have mentioned this before
true.
me, that they were like, because there's like pieces of his story in Spaceballs that are a lot like Kylo Ren, and it's
I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so for Noah, and for the viewers who might not have seen Spaceballs, the scene, there's this confrontation between Dark Helmet and Lone Star, where Dark Helmet is like, Lone Star, I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's college roommate. And he's like, what does that make us? And he's like, nothing. And that is that not Kylo and Rey?
That is so fucking iconic. What does that make us? Nothing. We're like zero relation, actually. I don't even know who you are.
Like when people got out the theater from The Rise of Skywalker, like the first shit that people posted online was that scene from Spaceballs.
But anyways, so that I
So
think
the
is
maid sucks
definitely...
out the air from the planet. The maid is
yes.
the maid is sucking the air from the planet.
Yes, gets destroyed. So the air goes back to the planet. Everything's great. Lone Star and Dark Helmet have this confrontation where they do like a little bit of a lightsaber-esque fight with their physical manifestation of the Schwartz. It's very confusing to me. I was not paying attention. This movie doesn't give a shit about the lore. So anyways, that's destroyed. The president, Dark Helmet, and then Colonel Sanders, who is essentially the Tarkin-esque character in this.
God, I forgot Colonel Sanders was Tarkin.
Yeah.
Colonel Sanders fucked TK421.
I can't wait to
clickbait.
I cannot wait to talk about Annie and talk about Tarkin in Annie. There's so
Oh my
much
God,
there.
I forgot about that.
Anyways, point is, stuff happens. Lone Star finds out that he is actually a prince, so he can marry Vespa, and then they get married. And that's basically the end of the movie. I don't know why, but it almost made me cry.
It's a good
Started
movie.
being emotional, not clickbait. I may need to watch this movie. Watch this space. That's a lot.
Very fun.
Thank you for your retelling of Spaceballs. That was a wonderful, like, dramatic reading of that
Of
movie.
course.
Also, oh well, if we're talking about Mel Brooks, also, he did do one other Star Wars parody, which was in History of the World Part 1, which is my favorite Mel Brooks movie, which came out before this, I believe. They have a trailer at the end for the part 2, and there is a part called Jews in Space that is very much a Star Wars parody, like down to the imagery and everything, but they never made a part 2. There's just like that little tiny thing, and now I gotta look and see actually if that came before or after.
It came before. There's a scene in Spaceballs where they're trying to figure out where the crew is, and so Colonel Sanders is like, why don't we just watch the videotape of this movie? It's very, very...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And they go and look at all of Mel Brooks's discography, or filmography, find Spaceballs, and watch it up until they are, like, caught up with themselves and are, like, moving in the screen as moving. It's very fun.
Oh my God, I know the other reference. You know when Rey in The Last Jedi like does her little wave in the mirror?
It's that exact scene.
There's a scene, for those who've seen it in Spaceballs, where they're all like, they're looking in the camera, and there's like, you know when like there's a mirror and then the camera and it like keeps reflecting, and there's like a many layers. It's just like that. Dark Helmet has that, and everyone was like, oh my God, it predicted The Last Jedi.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, but I was just thinking about Mel Brooks and when you're talking about like his filmography, I was like, "Oh, are they going to watch The Producers?" And then I got the thought about Springtime for Palpatine as the concept for a play.
No, you are done.
Before we jump to the 2010s, could I briefly discuss Weird Al Yankovic?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So we're doing mostly full length parodies right now. So I know what many people are going to say. They're going to say, "What about Robot Chicken? What about The Simpsons have done several. We can only cover so many right now." But before we jump to pretty much the 2010s, I do want to shout out the king of parodies, who is Weird Al Yankovic, who has done 2 Star Wars parodies. The first one was the Yoda parody of the song Lola by the Kinks. So that was the first one, and he did it in 1985, so it was way back there. The second one is an integral part of Star Wars history, which is the Saga Begins, which Weird Al Yankovic himself is he's a huge Star Wars fan, and like, if people don't know, like, if people think the Star Wars fandom is bad now, it's always been fucking crazy. The fandom when the prequels was coming out was fucking crazy insane. And it was also the beginning of the internet, so people were like, they were sleuthing it. So when the Phantom Menace was announced, and through that, like, people were posting leaks, rumors, very similar to today. Nothing has changed. So he wanted to do a song in honor of the Phantom Menace coming out, but he didn't know the plot of the Phantom Menace in order to make a parody of it. So this man scoured like forums for spoilers and leaks of the film and made the song using that, and he has probably one of the best music videos of all time. Like, I need everyone to go watch it. It's phenomenal. Not only because, and Mel's probably gonna bring this up a lot later, of like accuracy to Star Wars canon, whatever. Weird Al cares quite a lot. And that's also a big thing for parody for him in general, is like being very accurate to the source text in order to be able to do a really good parody of it, and that's why people love his stuff. This man accurately predicted the entire plot of the Phantom Menace in this song, and I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong, because of this, he wanted to get to the premiere of the movie and stuff like that, and eventually he got to go.
Before our time, Klaudia.
Oh my God. I did forget to say, this song predates both Mel and Noah's existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Weird Al Yankovic is a really good example of what we were talking about, of like people who make parodies because of the love of the thing. The Saga Begins, I don't think he's even made a Star Wars parody after that.
Klaudia, what song is this parodying? What song is it using as a base?
Oh, it's American Pie. I should have said that first. Okay. I should have said that first.
I was just making sure because I was about to revoke your white person card if you didn't know this song.
To be fair, I was also a child during that time, and I didn't know popular songs from this like 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is how I learned songs from Weird Al Yankovic parodies. So, like, give me a fucking break. The other piece of this is the video was so cool. It was one of the first viral videos on the internet before YouTube existed. And it became so popular that Don McLean, who sang the original song, and Yankovic has to get permission to do all these parodies. He loved the parody so much, and his kids loved it so much that sometimes he would catch himself singing the parody lyrics when he would perform the song. It was played frequently on Radio Disney with a radio edit. They removed the line, "Did you see him hitting on the Queen?"
Who is he?
Anakin.
Okay, good. I was like, what?
I'm gonna ask a question that's gonna age me so completely, like in the opposite direction. How did a video go viral before there was YouTube?
Because there were other places on the internet to watch videos before
YouTube.
Post
it on a website. So the video.
That's crazy.
So I need to look up actually where it was.
Like my
originally.
worldview has been shattered. Like I have been irrevocably changed by this information. I was not prepared to receive this.
Like people put it on like websites, and there were like video sites. Yeah, so this came out in 1999, like right before The Phantom Menace. And he's dressed up like Obi-Wan Kenobi and singing the whole time, and it's beautiful. Go learn about the Saga Begins because we wouldn't have Star Wars like we have today without it.
Okay, now I need to talk about Troopers 2011. Troopers, I'm about to say something that's going to be very upsetting. Aged like fucking cottage cheese, laid out.
All of College Humor aged so badly.
Laid in the hot Arizona sun, so bad. It is not
That's
funny.
Bad.
I didn't
That's
laugh.
Bad.
I did not laugh once in the original Troopers. However, we'll get later. It is about two like stormtrooper adjacent. It's like a kind of like office comedy type situation, except for it's not ever funny. It is the worst parts of 2011 humor. Just truly,
it's like YouTube's worst era.
Yes, truly a dark time. Things I will give it: Sam Reich, who is one of the actors in it. I love him very much, and I'm like, Sam, I know you're better than this. However, years later, in 2019, Troopers: Rise of the Budget came out. Troopers: Rise of the Budget is their kind of spoof of the sequel trilogy. It's starring Ally Beardsley and Raphael Chastain of College Humor and Dimension 20 fame. They play Mara and Vin. Mara and Vin are two troopers who go on this wild adventure. However, I will say it is one of the most... This one is like one of my favorite, like, looks into like what people think about the sequel trilogy who aren't like deep into the fiction, but also are. In a lot of ways, I think that the writers, because every episode was basically written by a different person and there's 9 episodes, like what their treatment for the sequel trilogy would have been. And so there is one episode where we get a very fun callback to Troopers, the garbage one, because Vin does not know who his father is. And so we find out that both Larry and Rich from the original Troopers trilogy, they are his dad, kind of, through some Palpatine cloney bullshit. Even though Vin is black and they are both white. They are gay. They are very
So the offensive College Humor parody has more gay representation than Star Wars itself?
Yeah, Ally Beardsley is non-binary. The person who played Mara is fully slay.
Much like Star Wars itself, when we were saying earlier of like how some of these parodies they do so great, and then they also what the fuck. It's just such a parallel to the source text where you're like, oh wow, it does so many wonderful things, and also why?
So true.
That's a lot to unpack there.
Anyways, so basically I'm not going to go super into it because there's so much to cover, but it is a really interesting look into like the sequel, like what people have to say about the sequel trilogy. And then also like there's this thing in theme plot point where this character Mara has felt very isolated in like trooper identity and like doesn't feel like they are worth anything, and so this Jedi character who's actually called a Wayseeker, which I was like, oh my god, just like in Star Wars, is like, you matter, like we love you, like da da da, and then it like ends up being like this like whole cult subplot and like actually doesn't give a fuck about you. Anyways, I was like, this is not
Crimson Dawn.
Not Crimson Dawn. I was like, this is fine because obviously this is them not necessarily sticking completely to the source material and just like kind of spoofing the genre and like having what they have to say about like MLMs, because it is a literal MLM in this series.
Also very Star Wars. MLMs, as you know from listening to this podcast, are very on brand for Star Wars.
So true.
I also remember watching this, the second one, I think, as it was coming out, because I was very deep into my Star Wars YouTube era. I watched a lot of conspiracy videos, a lot of crack videos, a lot of Star Wars Vine compilations, a lot, and then of course a lot of the CollegeHumor stuff would come up. And I do remember when it came up, and like, she's named Mara, and it's obviously a Mara Jade reference, and they do make a lot of Mara Jade references in it, because they're like, yo, we're like, they're like older millennials who are making this, so they're all like people who were fans of Mara Jade. And I was like, I was very toxic at that time, so I was like, shut up about Mara Jade, shut up, can we just talk about the movies, please, shut up. And I was like, I'm not watching this anymore.
That actually,
it's not funny anymore.
That's actually a great point. And I would like to get into my conversation about Annie, the musical, which came out in 2014. Annie the musical is a musical about Anakin Skywalker returning to Tatooine to do one last pod race. In this musical, Annie is like a big man child. His best friend is Jeremy Tarkin, not Wolof. His first name is Jeremy in this.
POV, that's Thrawn.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to say, in the CollegeHumor second Troopers thing, there is a character who is a little bit like Thrawn and Hux's love child, and I was like,
oh.
She is a girl boss.
Okay, wait. This is not a joke.
Ray Sloan.
This is a real musical that someone wrote, directed.
It's Starkid. It's Starkid, the
so,
Harry Potter musical.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Did not that pushed it into where it's supposed to be.
This was not their first musical after Harry Potter musical. This was
like almost 10, not 10 years, like 4 or 5 years after. So anyways, the plot of this is, like I said, Anakin going to Tatooine to do the Boonta Eve one last time. Mara Jade is also in this. I thought she was gonna be like the female lead, and I was like, what the fuck? But that's just more of like a little gag for people who know the deep Star Wars lore. The musical is really about Anakin, Jeremy Tarkin and JJ. There is a joke that the Death Stars together are supposed to look like a pair of tits, which I found very funny. 2014 was a dark time. Veers is in this musical, so Veers watch, you win.
Is he actually?
Yeah, Veers is in this musical. Huge L though. Tarkin is in love with a woman in this one, a stormtrooper named Emily.
No.
Queer erasure strikes again.
I know. I was like straight watching. This is so hateful. There's also, at the timestamp of 2146, Darth Vader says, Jesus Christ, I thought these jokes would slay. And that was, like, so true. That's me every time I enter this podcast.
There are several Star Wars musicals, fan musicals. There was supposed to be an official Star Wars musical that I think they even wrote some songs for, and then they stopped working on because then George was like, I'm going to go make the prequels. This one is the best one by far.
It is. It fucks. Also, their dancing in it is crazy. I watched this on 2x speed today so I could get through it. And there's like a lot of running in that musical, and it was crazy. Anyways, point is, also, here's the point, because we're in the Empire era. This is like, I would say probably like a year or two before A New Hope is when this is set. Because Obi-Wan Kenobi is also on Tatooine, and he is trying to get the fuck rid of Darth Vader while he can. And so he is like Jar Jar, who's also living on Tatooine for plot reasons. He does kill him with a gun. Just a gun. Not a like,
Jar Jar gets shot to death by Obi-Wan
Kenobi.
Not clickbait.
Not clickbait. Also,
Holy shit. What is the tea? The girls are fighting.
Obi-Wan is a drunk. Has some issues. When there's this scene where he like does a mind trick on a bartender, and he's like, "I have a surfboard dick." It's very funny to me personally.
Oh my god! I bet that's what the series is gonna be like.
Exactly.
Like his dick is shaped like a surfboard. Like
that's
it's
a great
flat.
question. Oh, also Obi-Wan does make a joke about how the 2 times he has chopped someone in half, they have come back as robots.
Clone Wars reference.
They did reference the Clone Wars. They also kind of did some Clone Wars bashing, which was hateful, but it was 2014. People are whatever in 2014.
It's weird though, because the Clone Wars has always been like beloved. Even when they hated the prequels, people were like, well, the Clone Wars fixed them, whatever. Even the Dude Bros. So like, that's hateful.
Yeah. But anyways, that's basically, if you have to listen to one song in this musical, I would recommend listening to You Got It, in parentheses, The Force. It's so funny. I really enjoyed it. I think there's another conversation to be had about like the concept of the Force and the will of the Force and the Jedi as a religion. Really,
God, I forgot about that in that musical.
Yeah, people are not great about having an understanding of like, I think once again, and we've had this conversation on this podcast before, it comes from this place of like people with religious trauma, usually and specifically people from Western countries who have religious trauma, really like to like put that on the Jedi Order, and that is just not canonically what that is about. Like George Lucas did not base the Jedi religion off of Western religions.
because like films like usually they pull heavily from Christianity, and this it did. I mean, he very much was like, it's Buddhism.
I think the weird thing about people talking about the Jedi is I think a lot of people are not able not anymore, but like very few people are able to just like have the good guys be the good guys in a story. They're like, no, but like, what if they're secretly evil? And I'm like, it's very, very like, it's very, very clear cut. Star Wars is not this complex. Okay. The Jedi are supposed to be good. They do fucked up shit sometimes, but like, they're not an evil religious order. They're not kidnapping children. I'm like, please do better.
I really do believe this is not only the best Star Wars musical, but the best Star Wars parody. And that's putting it over LEGO Star Wars, which is one of my favorites.
This musical is also very funny. I just love parodies, how they deal with Palpatine, because they're like, we don't really want to focus on his like whole shtick because it's boring, whatever, he's there. And in this one, to keep him sated, to keep him away from the overall plot, they do just have him construct a Lego set, like a Lego TIE Fighter. Not TIE Fighter, an X-Wing. Very funny. Very funny. But yeah, now I'm going to get to my last parody of the evening, the one that I really want to talk about. Phineas and Ferb 2014. This shit is crazy. This shit is crazy because it does imply that Perry the Platypus was the Rogue One squad. Like all of them. He had the Death Star plans.
He could. He could. Like if Perry the Platypus was in Star Wars, like we wouldn't have needed any of them.
You guys, you don't understand. Perry the Platypus died on Scarif.
No, but here's the thing. Perry the Platypus
wouldn't have.
No, that exactly. This episode of Phineas and Ferb proves that like Rogue One would have been so different if Perry the Platypus had been there. They would not have died on Scarif.
Perry the Platypus is a Mary Sue.
Yeah.
So true. And I guess then my advice to the Rogue One squad, like, I don't know, be better.
Be a platypus. Phineas and Ferb, and in the tradition of The Simpsons, in the tradition of, I guess, the two others that we mentioned, Weird Al and Starkid, whatever, Jesus, they do parody quite often, don't they?
Yeah.
And they are also a musical. Well, most of the time, anyway.
Yeah. Phineas and Ferb, there are musical numbers in this one, and they do kind of fuck. Vanessa, who is Doofenshmirtz's daughter, is a Twi'lek in this one, and I'm like, that's a choice.
Vanessa as Hera Syndulla?
No, she's like a singer at the cantina.
So this was made recently with the Disney acquisition?
Yes, that is the whole entire reason it got made. And this is why this is probably the most accurate of the parodies.
Other than LEGO, which is
Lego, of course.
Disney official sanctioned.
Exactly. So basically, this is the plot of A New Hope, but Phineas and Ferb are there, and they don't want to leave Tatooine. So they, like, reverse Luke Skywalker. First of all, Candace does play an Imperial in this one.
Candace,
of course
no!
she is. Of course she is. She by nature is a person who is looking to police others. I think that the fascist regime is gonna be a perfect fit.
This is just like Lop and Ocho from Star Wars Vision.
Stop. No, this is just like how DW becomes a cop at the end of Spoilers.
Tragically, I hate to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now Vanessa would never, but that's
Yeah, so true.
Oh my god.
Anyways, so basically, it's the plot of A New Hope, right? Perry gets the Death Star plans, gives them to R2. Leia is like doing her whole thing.
R2 and Leia, like the
They're
Star
all
Wars
there.
characters are
They're all there.
Oh, so it's like they're in. Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, they're in universe.
That's a different vibe.
It's very different. They get to interact with all these like canon characters.
It's a Kingdom Hearts vibe. Actually, sorry to interrupt you one more time. There was a announcement that there was going to be another Kingdom Hearts game, and people zeroed in on one shot that they thought looked like it had an AT-AT foot in it, and people were like, "Oh, they're finally going to bring Star Wars into Kingdom Hearts because it's owned by Disney, and people have been asking that for years." Kingdom Hearts, we could have a whole discussion about Kingdom Hearts as parody. Is it parody? What is it? Is Phineas and Ferb parody, or is it more like Kingdom Hearts in that it's crossover fan fiction?
I feel like it's crossover fan fiction because the ending of this episode gets into fan fiction territory. Leia does fucking bust down with Perry the Platypus.
I'm sorry,
she deserves that, actually.
I will get there. So basically, the plot of A New Hope is happening, but Phineas and Ferb are there. First of all, there's a lot of Tuscan rep in this.
Nice.
Some of it good, some of it bad.
Oh.
The good. Perry the Platypus makes a birthday cake for a Tuscan child.
Oh my god.
Also good. Ferb knows Tuscan.
That is... Okay, Djarin and Ferb.
The book of Boba Fett was actually just found dead in a ditch.
No. Because I actually do need to talk about a parallel to The Mandalorian. It predicted a scene in The Mandalorian. So, in this parody, Perry the Platypus is also on Tatooine because the Death Star plans, I don't know, I think Perry gets tasked with making sure R2 gets to Obi-Wan. So he is on Tatooine trying to follow R2, but R2 gets obviously taken by Jawas. So Perry the Platypus jumps up onto their little, like, vehicle, but unlike Djarin, he is the Chad to Djarin's virgin climber guy, and fucking jumps on it and is fine. Nothing bad happens to him, but the parallel of the very quiet, stoic Perry the Platypus.
Is Perry the Platypus just Platypus Djarin? Discuss.
Yes, so true. Djarin's fursona is a platypus. Basically, Doofenshmirtz is trying to create a Sithinator, which is a device that can make Sith.
Oh my god! Wait, it's the overarching plot of the Children of the Sith to clone Palpatine pipeline in order to create the Snoke clones, and also, oh my god, Doofenshmirtz was experimenting on Grogu and Mount Tantus.
No, you're done.
Wait, is Doofenshmirtz Thrawn then?
Not Doofenthrawn.
Mitth'raw'Evil'Incorporated. That's just the Chimera.
Candace has a mission, and it's to get socks for Darth Vader. That becomes a whole thing. Anyways, she has a song about how she likes the Empire because it gives her routine and order.
Oh my god, she's Thrawn! She's Thrawn!
She is Thrawn, I fear. Anyways, Baljeet and Buford are also stormtroopers with her, which feels hateful. Don't do this to my kings. Free my boy Baljeet. Even though at the end he has a very Bodhi Rook moment, which I was like, this is interesting.
Gas and Slay.
So slay. Anyways, Ferb has Wreath Silas energy. That's what I put in my notes. I don't know if that's true. I think it's funny.
I agree with that.
Oh, Watto is in this. So
Watto mention? Okay,
not
slay.
Watto mention, Motto cameo. Did I say
Love.
Motto?
You
Watto
did,
cameo.
Oh, because they're
Kelly?
on Tatooine.
Yes, they are on Tatooine, and they're trying to like figure out because they basically what happens is through some shenanigans they get the Death Star plans on them. Like it's on this disc, and they just happen to get this disc, and so they're like, we have to give this back to the robot to R2, because obviously it's important. And so Watto like shows them what's on the disc, and that's that. So they hire a pilot so they can go chase after the Falcon crew, who are here. And Boba Fett also is grocery shopping in this, which is very funny to me. I was like, Book of Boba Fett could never. Book of Boba Fett's screaming, crying, throwing up.
Actually, also, side note, there is a small Star Wars parody that is from early YouTube. It's like from 2006. It's called Grocery Store Wars. It is one of the first videos that I was obsessed with on the internet when I had access on like a desktop computer. It is cinematography. Imagine Veggie Tales, but with real veggies used like stop motion to do Star Wars. There's cucumbers. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We're not going to talk about it too much more here, but if we're talking about grocery shopping, please go watch Grocery Star Wars. That's all I'm going to say.
So they they see the Death Star plans, and they see, oh, there's this like very obvious like flaw in the plan. Like you could shoot that and the Death Star would blow up. They're like, who would ever make that mistake? And then it cuts to Dr. Doofenshmirtz. And so the implication is that he is Galen Erso, right?
Oh my
God.
God.
That is the implication.
That's kind of Yas and Slay. As I said before, they are both canonically autistic.
So true. Okay, anyway, so they go to this cantina.
Shout out to the novel Catalyst, which does establish Galen Erso as autistic
So
in literally everything but name.
Okay, actually, Catalyst is one of my favorite Star Wars books. I don't talk about it a lot, but it is one of my favorite.
It unironically fucks.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Lyra Urso, girl, you deserve so much better. Anyways, point is, they go to this cantina. Chewbacca, Han, and the crew have already left. So they're stuck having to work with Isabella Garcia Shapiro, Jewish Mexican icon. She's giving big Affy Hollow vibes, for those of you who are fans of the High Republic, where she's like, you guys are weird. You're annoying. I don't want to really deal with you. But you are paying to do this, so she's like the Han Solo, obviously, of this little adventure. They go into the Death Star.
The Han Solo is such a
cool choice.
Women's rights.
So true. So basically, they get to the Death Star. Some shenanigans are afoot. Phineas and Ferb, it is revealed, have been training with Obi-Wan Kenobi to become Jedi. But they don't really like use their powers for anything other than to make their lightsabers tools, because they're Phineas and Ferb. Anyways.
Oh my God, that's Ram Jomaram moment.
So true. Wait, actually.
Is Ferb Ram Jomaram? Discuss.
No, I feel like it has to be Phineas.
Oh, that way. If they're Wreath and
Exactly. Anyways, point is, shenanigans are afoot. Ferb accidentally gets hit with the Sithinator and turns into Darth Ferb.
Ezra Bridger moment.
He dresses up like Maul. It's very funny.
Yeah, with the green spikes. Yes. Obsessed. Yes, it's so obsessed with him.
Savage moment.
The Savage Press era. And he does nearly kill Phineas. Like in the show.
Savage Press era.
Also followed by people talk shit about the helicopter lightsabers, myself included. I simply think that they're the hoverboards of the Star Wars universe. Neither here nor there. They get into some shenanigans with those lightsabers where it is like basically like, I don't even know how to describe it. It is just a weapon of mass destruction.
So true.
And so they fight it out until Candace, who has a change of heart mid-episode, she's like, wait, the Empire's bad? Question mark? We just blew up a planet? That's no good.
Oh my god, is she callous?
She's giving callous vibes. Anyways, point is, they are like, yay! Candace, Baljeet, and Buford are not Imperials anymore. Ferb isn't a Sith. Everything's great. Wait, we are stuck on the Death Star and they're about to blow it up. Isabella, like fucking Deus Ex Machinas her ass to the Death Star after talking to her little fire starter girls. I don't know what the fuck they're called.
Arsonists.
Arsonists. They're very much so giving Padme's handmaidens in this episode. They didn't do that.
Nice.
I think it would have been a very funny gag for them to do, to make them dressed as Padme's handmaidens. But
POV, Vanessa joins Crimson Dawn with Sabe.
so true. I love that you keep mentioning Vanessa because she's not really in this episode at all.
I don't know.
She has a song. Anyways,
Wait,
point
when you
is,
said Vanessa, did you mean Isabella?
That's what I meant.
Oh.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's late. I'm an
and
idiot.
it's fine, and it's fine. I just wanted to clarify because I was like, so Vanessa, not to clock you on the Phineas and Ferb
Ferb
lore,
The-
but Vanessa does not work with the Fireside Girls, okay, or Campfire Girls. She doesn't work with the girls, capital T, capital G. So the gals go to the Death Star.
Anyways, so yeah, basically she saves the day. They're all fine, and then we get to see like the medal scene from A New Hope. Everyone's gotten their medals, and then there's like a dance and song moment. There's a very funny line where Isabella is like, hey, Phineas, are we related in any way, shape, or form? And he's like, no, and then they kiss. I think it's just a funny thing, and that they are endgame, so whatever. So that makes me kind of believe that this is like maybe a dream that Isabella had, and like that is what this all means. But anyways, point is, at the very end, like one of the last shots of this fucking episode is Leia busting it down with Perry, the platypus. They are dancing. They are getting lit.
That's so powerful.
And Han and Luke are just like upset with their arms crossed in the corner. It's very funny.
I think Carrie Fisher would approve of that, to be frank.
So true.
Did Perry the Platypus cuck Han Solo?
Not clickbait.
So yeah, those were the Star Wars parodies I watched. Thank you for bearing with me as I info dumped about all of them.
You're an incredible narrator. I felt like I was really like there along for the ride with so many of these that I literally haven't seen.
Yeah.
Slays were definitely had.
Yeah.
I think that like it was a lot of information, but at the end of the sleigh, it's so important that we like talk about these kinds of things because they're very, very fun to discuss. Sorry, I just have to find a way to work at the end of the sleigh into a sentence, and I really was giving it my all, but moving on the fly was so hard.
So true. Improv is so hard. So this is all to say, I think I can't choose a favorite. I think all of them were pretty solid. I can't choose the worst one, and it was Troopers 2011.
Thank you so much for joining us this week for our parodies of Star Wars Rogue One on RuPaul's Podrace. Our episodes usually drop every Sunday. Right now we're on a every 2-week schedule until Obi-Wan Kenobi comes out. For updates, Star Wars news, more cursed shit, follow us on social media at RuPaul's Podrace on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. If you really love the show, please rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Spotify, or Overcast. It means a lot to us, and it really helps us out a lot. Also, our 1-year anniversary is in 2 weeks and is going to be our next episode. And we'd like to do an AMA. We used to do a lot of more questions, and then TikTok broke the Q&A function, and then it brought it back. Tweet at us, send us an IG message, go to our TikTok Q&A, ask us anything. We're very excited. We're very excited to celebrate 1 year with you guys, even though we don't have any Star Wars media to cover right now. It's gonna be very fun and exciting in Yasin's Lane. We have fun things planned. So send us many fun little questions, and a lot of apologies if we did not answer your questions before. You guys sent a ton of them in the before times, and then TikTok decided this function doesn't exist anymore, and then randomly brought it back. So we lost like a ton of your questions. But if you don't have TikTok, you can also send them other ways. So, and we also have an email address. we haven't said that one in a while, which is just RuPalp'sPodrace@gmail.com. You can send questions there as well. Once again, thank you for joining us, and may the force be with you. And don't crip it up.
Waka waka.